If you're watching this, you're part of the growing fleet that refuses to believe humans are just another soft, forgettable species. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe for more galactic justice stories, and drop a comment below. What do you think the galaxy fears most about us? Now, let's begin. The Galactic Council chamber glimmered like a cathedral of crystal and arrogance. Rows of alien delegates shimmered beneath the glow of plasma chandeliers, each species represented by an emblem of power or superiority. Only one table stood without either, Earth's. Captain Elias Ward sat there, hands folded, face unreadable. The man looked more like a soldier than a diplomat, close-cropped hair, sharp eyes that measured everything in the room. He wore a dark uniform with no medals, no flourish. Just the blue insignia of a new world that hadn't yet earned respect. To his right stood Dr. Orion Vance, the xenobiologist assigned to represent Earth's biological diversity. His coat was too long, his grin too relaxed for a political hearing. He tapped something on his wrist console and whispered, "They're going to regret laughing, you know?" Ward didn't look at him. "They already are." A resonant hum filled the chamber as the High Arbiter, a creature of translucent skin and flickering nerves, raised its gavel. By majority decree, species designation 47, self-identified as human, shall henceforth be classified as harmless, threat level 0. The decision echoed through the amphitheater like an insult. The audience, hundreds of representatives from across the stars, burst into soft laughter. The sound was like wind chimes and hisses, applause and mockery woven together. Ambassador Crixtal of the Valeth Dominion leaned forward, his long mandibles twitching with amusement. A curious creature, this human. Soft flesh, weak bone density, no natural weapons, no psionic defense. And you claim to have conquered your own planet? How? By accident. Laughter followed. Ward didn't blink. "We're good at adapting." Crixtal's 4 eyes gleamed, studying the human's expression as though searching for offense. "Adapting? That's what vermin do when they survive extermination. You should feel honored, Captain. Our council rarely spares time for non-threat species." Dr. Vance smiled faintly. "You might want to hold that thought until we finish the presentation." The chamber dimmed. Holograms flickered to life behind the humans, images of Earth, forests, oceans, cities. Alien delegates murmured, unimpressed. One leaned toward another. "Primitive ecosystem. No apex predators worth study." Crixtal tilted his head. "What possible contribution could your world offer to the galactic biosphere, Doctor?" Vance clasped his hands behind his back. "We've brought samples of our domesticated companions." A ripple of amusement spread through the chamber. The translator drone stuttered briefly before rendering the word, "pets." "Domesticated companions?" Crixtal scoffed. "Do you mean prey animals? The kind you feed on?" "Not exactly," said Ward, voice even. "They're partners. Friends." Another laugh. "Your pets are friends? You truly are harmless." Ward's gaze sharpened. "Only to those who don't make us angry." The High Arbiter tapped its staff again. "The Council appreciates your enthusiasm, Captain, but this assembly is not for jest. The motion of harmless classification remains approved unless you can demonstrate a compelling reason for reassessment." Vance stepped forward. "Then allow us a demonstration." The chamber's laughter faded, curiosity creeping in. Crixtal clicked his mandibles. "You wish to present these pets?" "Correct," Vance said. "They're waiting in our transport bay." The Arbiter conferred with its aides through a shimmering data link, then turned its eyeless face toward the humans. "Very well. The Council grants you clearance for one standard unit of demonstration. Containment protocols will be enforced. Proceed." Ward inclined his head. "You might want to increase the containment level." "And why is that?" Crixtal asked, still smirking. Ward's lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile he'd shown all day. "Because if they smell fear, your containment field won't matter." The alien's smirk faltered. Ward and Vance exchanged a look, a quiet agreement born of countless missions together. The kind of understanding that didn't need words. Vance adjusted his wrist console and sent the signal. Somewhere deep in the hangar below the council chambers, heavy mechanisms began to shift. The sound reverberated through the structure, deep, metallic, alive. Delegates turned uneasily. The Valeth envoy clicked his claws. "Is that machinery?" "No," said Ward. "That's breathing." A cold silence filled the chamber. Even the drones hesitated, their lights flickering as if sensing something vast and old stirring within the transport bay. Vance's grin widened. You declared humans harmless without asking why we survived everything our world threw at us. Crickstal's mandibles twitched again, uncertain now. Because your planet is primitive. Lucky perhaps. Not luck, Ward said softly. We learned early that you don't have to be the strongest thing in the wild. You just have to make the strongest thing trust you. The chamber trembled once more. Somewhere beyond the sealed doors, a low growl rippled through the air, so deep it seemed to vibrate inside the bones of every being present. The lights dimmed, and for the first time the Council of 1,000 Species stopped laughing. Ward stood, buttoning his uniform jacket with calm precision. Counselors, with your permission, I'll introduce you to Earth's idea of a family pet. The Arbiter's gavel clattered to the floor as the growl rose again, closer, followed by the sound of metal warping under something powerful. Crickstal rose slowly, the confidence gone from his voice. Captain Ward, what have you brought here? Ward's answer was simple, quiet, and chilling. Proof that Harmless is a matter of perspective. The chamber doors began to open. And somewhere, in the charged silence between heartbeat and chaos, every creature in the room realized that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons. It was its connections. The first hiss of released pressure filled the chamber, a sound that promised revelation, or ruin. Ward turned once toward Vance, who whispered, "Ready?" "Always." The doors opened wider. A shadow moved within, too large, too fluid, too alive. Delegates gasped, claws and tendrils curling in fear. Ward raised his hand slightly, calm as ever. "Counselors," he said, voice steady as the storm about to break, "meet Nox." And as the lights flared, the galaxy's laughter finally died. The air inside the Galactic Council chamber thickened as the hangar doors completed their mechanical groan and locked into place. Silence pressed against the walls like a physical weight. Light bled into the darkness within the bay, revealing movement. A ripple, a pulse, a shape that defied easy description. For one suspended moment, nothing breathed. Then a claw stepped forward, black as obsidian and edged like a blade. Another followed, heavier, deliberate. A low growl rolled through the chamber's vaulted space, shaking the light fixtures. When the creature emerged fully, several delegates recoiled instinctively. It was sleek and muscled, with a form that looked designed for pursuit. Midnight scales glimmered beneath the chamber's luminescence, and faint blue veins pulsed like circuitry beneath the hide. Its eyes burned with twin orbs of electric gold. Captain Elias Ward didn't move. He simply turned slightly toward Dr. Orion Vance. "He's calm." Vance nodded, his tone light, almost conversational. "He's curious. You can tell by the tail." The massive tail flicked once, the motion sharp enough to stir the air. Crickstal rose from his seat, mandibles clicking in disbelief. That is a void predator," he hissed. "Those were thought extinct. How did you capture one?" Ward answered evenly, "We didn't capture him. We raised him." The council erupted in disbelief. Voices layered over each other in every language imaginable, protests, accusations, panic. The Arbiter's staff cracked against the floor, restoring order with a sharp pulse of blue energy. Ward waited until the noise faded, then gestured toward the creature. "Nox," he said softly. The name seemed to command gravity itself. The beast's head lifted. Its pupils narrowed to slits and then, astonishingly, it sat. Calm. Obedient. Watching Ward with unwavering attention. Dr. Vance smiled faintly. He recognizes tone. And he's very protective of his handler. Crickstal stared, incredulous. "You trained it?" Ward folded his arms. "Domesticated. There's a difference." The ambassador barked a bitter laugh. "Impossible. Those creatures erased entire colonies. They tore through armored divisions. You expect us to believe it obeys you?" Vance tapped a control on his wrist console, and a transparent panel shimmered into the air between them, displaying neural data. "Empathy bond," he said. "A biological link. Similar to the kind we have with Earth animals, dogs, wolves, even horses. We adjusted the neural resonance field until mutual recognition stabilized. Essentially, he feels what we feel." Crickstal sneered. "That's not control. That's madness." "Maybe," said Ward. "But it works." Another shape appeared in the darkness of the hangar. This one moved lower to the ground, liquid and fast, slipping into the chamber like smoke solidifying into muscle. It had no distinct color, shifting hues as it crossed shadows, its skin reacting to light in microscopic ripples. The council gasped as the second creature, smaller but visibly quicker, stopped beside Nox. Vance spoke without taking his eyes off her. "Echo. The quiet one. The two predators stood side by side now, their heads tilting in unison as they surveyed the council. Delegates trembled behind their barriers. The creatures were motionless but radiated something worse than rage, awareness. They were listening. The High Arbiter's voice carried a tremor. "Captain Ward, you are endangering this assembly." Ward's tone remained professional. "Negative, Counselor. They are under full behavioral restraint." Crickstall's claws dug into the railing. "Prove it." Ward turned to Vance. "Fetch." Before anyone could question the order, Knox vanished. One heartbeat, the space beside Ward was empty. The next, the enormous creature stood beside the ambassador's dais, a blur of black and blue energy trails dissipating around him. Crickstall froze, mandibles parted in shock. Knox lowered his massive head, opened his jaws, and delicately dropped a small object at the alien's feet. It was Crickstall's ceremonial staff, a relic symbolizing authority, something that had been clipped to his side a second ago. The alien hadn't even felt it go missing. The chamber filled with a sound halfway between awe and fear. Vance broke the silence, his voice conversational again. "Good boy." Knox rumbled softly, the deep vibration echoing through the room like thunder trying to laugh. Ward retrieved the staff, handed it back to Crickstall and said, "As you can see, they're precise. They understand restraint." The ambassador's lower eyes blinked rapidly. "They could have torn me apart." Ward's reply was simple. "They didn't." Vance added quietly, "They wouldn't. Not unless I let them." The Arbiter conferred with several aides, whispering through neural channels. The chamber's translation drones buzzed nervously, unable to smooth over the unease in the air. The council's arrogance had fractured. What replaced it was confusion. Crickstall finally found his voice again. "You claim these monsters obey because they care for you?" Ward shrugged. "We care for them first." "That's illogical." "It's human." The answer carried weight, not defiance, not pride, just truth. Vance watched the delegates, his expression unreadable now. He saw what they didn't yet realize. Fear was shifting into calculation. The galaxy's predators, politicians, and warlords were watching two humans and wondering if this was a weapon or a warning. Crickstall leaned forward, voice low. "If this is a trick, Captain, it will be your last." Ward met his gaze without flinching. "Then you'd better hope it isn't." The council chamber seemed to breathe again, but it was an uneven breath, a collective awareness that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, the galaxy's oldest powers were not laughing at humanity, they were watching it. Knox turned his head, eyes glowing faintly, scanning the room. His tail swept the floor once, leaving a faint streak of static discharge that crackled against the crystal tiles. Echo crouched low beside Vance's legs, nostrils flaring as if tasting the tension in the air. Ward's voice cut through the silence like a controlled detonation. "This demonstration is complete. You've seen what our companions are capable of when calm. I'd suggest keeping them that way." The Arbiter's tone was cautious now. "Your point is made, human. The Council will deliberate." Vance adjusted his wrist console, signaling both creatures. Knox and Echo rose simultaneously, glancing once toward Ward before retreating into the hangar shadows. The sound of their departure, heavy, rhythmic, deliberate, faded until it was only memory. When the last echo died, the council chamber felt emptier, smaller, as though something immense had just left and taken a measure of safety with it. Crickstall's voice was quieter now. "You understand what you've done, Captain? You've proven your species isn't harmless. You've proven you're dangerous." Ward stood straight. "No, Ambassador. We've proven we're loyal. There's a difference." The words hung in the air, steady and final. No one spoke after that. Even the translation drones hesitated, as if unwilling to disturb the silence. Ward and Vance turned to leave, the glow of the chamber fading behind them. The humans didn't look back. They didn't need to. Every being in that hall would remember the sound of those creatures breathing, and the calm voice of the men who called them friends. Outside the chamber doors, Vance exhaled and muttered, "Think they'll still call us harmless?" Ward allowed himself a small, dry smile. "If they do, they won't say it twice." And somewhere deep within the council station, behind reinforced doors, something vast and black purred softly in the dark, waiting for its handler's return. The council convened again the following cycle, this time under stricter security protocols. The once luminous chamber was dimmed to a more somber hue, as if the light itself feared what it might reveal. Reinforced shields covered the walls, and containment drones floated in silent orbit around the assembly. Even the air felt charged, tense, metallic, cautious. Captain Elias Ward and Dr. Orion Vance stood in the center of the chamber once more, watched by 1,000 unblinking eyes. Knox and Echo were confined behind translucent containment fields, their movements slow and deliberate. The Council had demanded another demonstration, an official assessment, to determine whether humanity's so-called domestication was genuine control or simply a dangerous illusion. Ward could sense the unspoken verdict already forming in the room. They didn't want proof of safety, they wanted proof of failure. Ambassador Crixtal presided now, his voice sharpened by distrust. Captain Ward, Dr. Vance, the Council will observe your claimed mastery under regulated testing conditions. Should the subjects exhibit unprovoked aggression, humanity's classification will be revised accordingly. Vance murmured under his breath, revised meaning extermination protocol. Ward didn't answer. His gaze stayed on Knox, whose tail swept once across the floor before coiling still. The arbiter signaled the beginning of the trial. High above, hatches opened, and a formation of drones descended, their plasma arrays humming. The chamber floor shifted, reforming into an artificial terrain. Obstacles, barriers, sensor fields. The scene resembled an arena disguised as an experiment. Begin simulation, Crixtal ordered. The drones activated, emitting low-frequency pulses that mimicked aggression pheromones. To most species they were harmless. To predators they were a declaration of war. Knox lifted his head. Echo's eyes narrowed to slits. Both tensed but remained seated. Ward's voice carried across the hall, calm and firm. Stay. The larger creature's muscles shuddered once, then relaxed. The smaller one, Echo, lowered her head to the ground, ears pressed flat, waiting. The restraint was palpable, visible. Some delegates murmured in disbelief. Others watched with predatory fascination. Crixtal leaned forward. Increase intensity. The drones fired mock projectiles, non-lethal plasma bursts that exploded into light and concussive sound. The air cracked. The predator's instincts screamed at them to fight. Knox growled, a sound like an earthquake finding its voice. Vance's fingers hovered over his console, his eyes tracking the beast's vitals. They're holding, he whispered. Ward took one step forward, raising a hand, his tone sharp but steady. Focus. The words sliced through the noise like command steel. Both creatures froze, their gazes locking on Ward alone. The growl faded. Then one of the drones misfired. The plasma bolt hit too close to Ward's position, grazing the barrier's edge. For a fraction of a second, light flared and heat seared his arm. He didn't flinch, but the creatures did. Knox's pupils contracted to pinpoints. The deep blue glow along his veins ignited, spreading like molten fire. Echo let out a sound between a snarl and a scream. Ward shouted, "Stand down." But instinct had already overridden training. Knox lunged forward. The containment field shattered like brittle glass under a surge of kinetic energy. Drones scattered. The chamber filled with alarm sirens, barriers deploying too late. Vance's console erupted with warning lights. He's not attacking the Council, he yelled. He's protecting you. The creature's movements were precise, devastatingly fast. Every strike calculated to intercept a threat vector toward Ward. One drone attempted to recalibrate targeting, and Knox cleaved it in two with a single swipe of his claw. Echo darted in perfect synchronization, dismantling containment nodes with graceful brutality. To the Council it looked like chaos. To Vance, it was coordination, defensive choreography written in primal language. Ward stepped forward, ignoring the shouts. Knox, look at me. The creature froze mid-motion. Sparks cascaded around them, drones still hovering at a cautious distance. Look at me, Ward repeated, voice low but commanding. You're safe. I'm safe. For a long heartbeat, the world held still. The light in Knox's eyes shifted from burning gold to a subdued, uncertain amber. Slowly, the tension bled out of his muscles. Echo slinked closer to Vance, lowering her head in apology, trembling like a guilty child. The chamber looked like a battlefield, cracked tiles, scorch marks, scattered debris. No casualties, no bodies. Just silence and the echo of restraint rediscovered. Crixtal rose from his seat, trembling with rage. You've proven our point. They are weapons, not companions. You endanger every being in this council. Ward turned sharply, voice calm but edged. No. You endangered us. You pushed them to protect. That's not violence, that's loyalty. The ambassador hissed, loyalty born of fear. Then you've never had a friend. The word struck like a pulse blast, quiet, lethal, absolute. Vance approached slowly, checking his creatures. Vitals steady, he reported softly. No fatalities. No offensive aggression. The Arbiter's gaze flickered between the ruined drones and the unharmed delegates. Remarkable, it murmured. They distinguish between threat and restraint. Ward met the Arbiter's gaze. Exactly. They're dangerous only to those who give them a reason to be. Crixtal slammed his staff against the railing. This trial is over. The Council will vote for containment immediately. But before he could finish, the Arbiter raised a trembling hand. No vote yet. We have seen instinct guided by control, violence tempered by compassion. The Council must deliberate further. The ambassador glared, mandibles twitching, but said nothing more. Ward exhaled slowly, the faintest trace of relief in his voice. Vance, secure them. Let's get them back to the bay. The doctor nodded, issuing soft commands through his console. Knox lowered himself to the ground obediently, tail sweeping debris aside. Echo followed, curling close to his flank. Together, they moved toward the exit with eerie precision, like shadows retreating from light. When the great doors closed behind them, the silence that followed was thick enough to feel. Ward and Vance stood alone before the Council. Crixtal's voice broke it. You can train beasts. You can even make them hesitate. But one day they'll turn on you. And when they do, no bond will save you. Ward didn't look at him. Then you still don't understand. They don't obey because they fear us. They obey because they choose to. He turned toward the exit, his boots echoing against the fractured floor. Vance followed, glancing back only once at the sea of alien faces, some furious, some odd, some thoughtful. As the chamber doors sealed behind them, the faint hum of the containment field reactivated, but the memory of what had broken it lingered in every delegate's mind. Humanity had entered the Council stage as a curiosity. Now they were a question no one knew how to answer. Ward rubbed the burn on his arm, a quiet smile ghosting his lips. You think that'll change their minds? Vance shook his head. No. But it'll make them afraid to underestimate us again. Ward nodded once, gaze distant. Good. Fear's a start. Respect comes next. Behind the sealed hangar doors, two great hearts beat in unison, steady, loyal, waiting. And for the first time, the galaxy realized the true danger of calling a human harmless. Word of the Council's failed test spread faster than the truth could contain it. Within hours, every channel in the Galactic network carried the same story. The so-called harmless humans had tamed extinction-class predators, and those predators had nearly leveled the Council chamber. The footage, edited, exaggerated, weaponized, showed flashes of plasma fire, claws slicing through drones, and Captain Ward standing calm at the center of chaos. To most viewers, it looked less like control and more like dominion. The Council convened again in emergency session, this time behind sealed doors. No guests. No cameras. Only power. Ward and Vance stood in the center once more, but the tone was different now. Gone was the laughter. In its place, fear. Ambassador Crixtal's voice was stripped of mockery. You've made your point, humans. You've shown us that your so-called companions are capable of restraint, when it suits you. But the galaxy cannot coexist with creatures that respond to fear with annihilation. Ward stood silent. His uniform had been repaired, his posture unchanged. Beside him, Vance's wrist console emitted a soft pulse every few seconds. Knox and Echo's vitals steady and calm. Crixtal gestured sharply toward the security screen behind them. Our observation logs indicate these predators exhibit independent predatory thinking. They strategize. They assess. They even hesitate. You call that domestication? I call it the prelude to uprising. They don't rise against us, Ward said evenly. They rise for us. That's precisely the problem, Crixtal snapped. You've created living weapons bound by emotional blackmail. Vance spoke before Ward could. You're misinterpreting empathy as control. They don't serve us out of programming, they choose to protect. Choice? The ambassador hissed. You think beasts understand choice? They understand trust, Vance replied, his voice calm but edged. Better than most politicians I've met. A murmur of unease rippled through the chamber. The Arbiter's glowing form flickered, signaling impatience. The Council's decision is unanimous. The creatures are to be contained and transferred to neutral custody until humanity's claims can be verified. Ward's jaw tightened. Neutral custody? You mean imprisonment? It's precaution, said the Arbiter. For the stability of all. Vance's voice dropped to a whisper that carried like thunder. If you separate them from us, they'll interpret it as hostility. You'll be the ones who destabilize everything. Crixtal sneered. Idle threats won't sway us, Doctor. The creatures will be sedated and secured. Ward took one step forward, his tone low but lethal. Don't. The guards moved anyway. From the viewing bay above, 2 containment units detached from their restraints, gliding downward on repulsor thrusters. They looked like sleek coffins of reinforced alloy, humming with suppression fields. The first landed beside Nox's enclosure, the second near Echo's. The beast stirred instantly. Nox's eyes flared, the golden light within shifting to violent crimson. Echo's hackles rose, her form shimmering as her skin reflexively bent light in confusion. Ward moved toward them, but 2 guards intercepted. Captain, for your safety. He brushed past them. You're about to make the worst mistake of your lives. Vance shouted, deactivate the drones. They're reading threat postures. Too late. The containment pods deployed tranquilizer emitters. A hiss filled the chamber, a mist of suppressant chemicals. Nox bellowed once, the sound deep enough to rattle the walls. Then came the silence before catastrophe. The suppressants evaporated in a flash of blue as the creature's body temperature spiked beyond the compound's tolerance. Echo screeched, leaping across the bay with blinding speed, slamming into one of the drones before it could react. The chamber erupted into chaos again. Alarms, shouting, energy barriers flaring and collapsing under stress. Crixtal stumbled back as a console exploded near him. Contain them. Now. Ward ran toward Nox, shouting above the storm. Nox, look at me. Stand down. The creature's gaze snapped to him, wild and afraid, not angry. That single look shattered the illusion of monstrous intent. Ward stepped closer, raising his hand slowly, ignoring the searing heat radiating from the beast's skin. Easy, he said softly. I'm here. The red in Nox's eyes faded back to gold. The giant exhaled, a tremor that shook the floor. He lowered his head, allowing Ward to press a hand against the plates along his jaw. Good boy, Ward whispered. Echo crouched nearby, chest heaving, watching the guards through slit pupils. Her claws dug furrows into the floor, but she didn't move. Vance was already beside them, voice steady. Vitals stabilizing. Neural sync holding. He glanced up at the council. You see? They're not reacting to aggression, they're reacting to fear. Yours. The Arbiter's voice crackled through damaged speakers. Cease this madness. Remove the creatures. Ward turned toward the delegates, every word measured. You tried to imprison loyalty and then called it dangerous when it resisted you. These creatures have never attacked without cause. Every scar they carry they got defending us. Tell me, counselors, how many of you can say the same about your own soldiers? The silence that followed was colder than space. Crixtal's face was unreadable now. Beneath the armor of his arrogance, something like doubt flickered. He finally said, You speak as though loyalty were a weapon. Ward looked down at Nox, still kneeling at his feet. It is. The sharpest one we have. Vance straightened, his tone softer. What you fear isn't that we can command them. You fear that they choose to listen. Because if something like that can love us, then maybe the universe chose the wrong species to call weak. The Arbiter's gaze dimmed. Captain Ward, Dr. Vance. You will remove your companions from this facility. The Council will deliberate privately on humanity's standing. Ward gave a short nod. We'll save you the trouble. He turned to Nox and Echo. Let's go home. The creatures rose silently, their heavy footfalls like the drumbeat of inevitability. The air around them vibrated with restrained power as they passed through the wreckage. Guards stepped aside instinctively. At the exit, Ward paused and looked back once. Crixtal met his gaze but didn't speak. For the first time, there was no derision there, only the faintest echo of respect, or perhaps the understanding of something larger than fear. As the humans left, the sound of the massive doors closing reverberated through the chamber, sealing the council inside with its unease. In the hangar, as the transport ramp lifted, Vance broke the silence. They'll call us dangerous now. Ward checked the readouts one last time, then looked at the 2 beasts resting quietly in their containment cradles. Good, he said. Maybe they'll finally start paying attention. Outside the viewport, the stars turned as their ship detached from the station. Somewhere behind them, the Galactic Council debated whether to label humanity a threat. But on every world watching, in every transmission whispered through the void, one truth had already taken root. Humans didn't conquer through power. They conquered through loyalty. And that, the galaxy was beginning to learn, was the one force no weapon could stop. The return to Earth wasn't quiet. By the time Ward's ship broke atmosphere, half the galaxy had already branded humanity as a paradox, harmless yet heretical. Broadcasts debated whether to fear them or to follow them. Some species began sending envoys, others mobilized fleets. But none dared strike first. Not after seeing what followed humanity's lead. Ward stood on the observation deck, eyes fixed on the curve of the planet below. The lights of the eastern continent shimmered like constellations trapped under glass. Behind him, Vance ran diagnostic sweeps, but even he kept glancing toward the viewport, as if seeing home for the first time. "They're scared," Vance murmured. "Every major council in the core systems. They're talking about sanctioning us. Isolation protocols. Maybe even interdiction." Ward's reflection didn't move. "Let them talk. You don't care?" "I care that they finally see us. Took them long enough." He turned, finally meeting Vance's eyes. "We didn't start this. But we're not going to crawl away from it either." In the corner of the hangar, Knox stirred in his cradle, a low rumble vibrating the deck plates. Echo padded silently along the walls, her translucent hide refracting the dull ship light like liquid crystal. They weren't restless, they were listening. Always listening. Vance closed his datapad and leaned back. "They'll come, you know. They'll try to take them again." Ward's jaw tightened. "Then we show them what happens when you come for family." The silence that followed was broken by the ping of an encrypted transmission. It wasn't council frequency. It was older, classified human military channels. Ward keyed it open. The holographic projector bloomed with the form of Admiral Rains, face drawn tight with urgency. "Captain Ward. Dr. Vance. You're to return immediately to Luna Command. Priority Alpha. The Council's not waiting for deliberation, they're sending a containment fleet." Ward's voice was level. "How big?" 70 ships. They've declared the Apex program a breach of interspecies accord. They're demanding the surrender of Knox and Echo. Vance cursed under his breath. "That's not a fleet, that's an invasion." Rain's hologram flickered. "You're to hold position until extraction. Earth Command's mobilizing defensive assets." Ward's expression hardened. "Negative, Admiral. If they reach Earth orbit, it's already over. We'll intercept them at the lunar perimeter." "Captain. Permission to disobey orders, sir." Rain's silence lasted 3 seconds too long. Then he nodded once. "Godspeed, Ward." The transmission cut. Vance exhaled. "You really want to take them head-on?" Ward's gaze returned to the viewport. "We don't need to win. We just need them to understand what not losing looks like." Within the hour, the Resolute accelerated toward the dark side of the moon. The Council fleet emerged from slipspace soon after. Sleek silver ships in disciplined formation, weapons primed, transponders broadcasting sterilization protocols. They came not to fight but to erase. Ward stood in the command pit, surrounded by red tactical overlays. Knox and Echo were no longer in their cradles. They stood beside him, armored in kinetic harnesses built from scavenged plating and human ingenuity. Even restrained, their presence radiated power that made every console hum. Vance's hands flew across controls. Telemetry locked. "They've scanned us 6 times already. They're confused. No human ships ever broadcast a life sign profile like this." "Let them wonder," Ward said. The lead council ship sent an open transmission. Ambassador Crickstall's face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Ward. You were ordered to surrender those creatures. Stand down and you may yet be spared." Ward smiled faintly. "You should have stayed in your chamber, Ambassador. You're not built for war." Crickstall's eyes narrowed. "Neither are you." "Exactly," Ward said. "That's what makes us dangerous." He cut the channel. Vance muttered, "We're outnumbered 70-1. Ward glanced at Knox. The beast's golden eyes burned like suns. Not for long. The first salvo came without warning, a wall of ion fire streaking across the void. The Resolute shuddered as shields flared, buckling under the onslaught. Ward gripped the railing, unshaken. "Echo." The creature vanished, literally. Her form refracted, bending light around the ship until its signature dissolved into the darkness. The next volley hit nothing but vacuum. On the flank, Knox roared. Energy rippled through his body, and the kinetic amplifiers on his harness detonated outward, launching magnetic shockwaves. Half the Council fleet's formation faltered, ships tumbling as their stabilizers overloaded. Vance stared, half in awe, half in disbelief. "That's not possible. He just disrupted an entire armada." Ward's eyes were cold steel. "That's what loyalty looks like when it's betrayed." They pressed the attack, not to kill but to terrify. Echo darted through the chaos like a ghost, shredding through drones and leaving trails of refracted energy that confused scanners. Nox's shockwaves turned space itself into a weaponized drumbeat. Every strike was calculated, every move controlled. Ward's voice cut through the noise. Open transmission. All channels. He faced the holographic projection of the Council fleet, his voice amplified across the stars. You came here to cage what you don't understand. You thought loyalty made us weak. You thought compassion was control. You were wrong. Nox growled behind him, the sound carrying like thunder through the transmission. Ward continued, his tone calm but lethal. You see monsters at our side. We see friends who die for us. And that, he pointed toward the fleet, is something your sterile empires will never have. You can conquer fear. But you can't conquer love. For the first time, the Council fleet hesitated. Their weapons dimmed. Their formations wavered. Even Crickstall's ship ceased firing. Vance whispered, they're standing down. Ward nodded slowly. They finally understand. Nox's breathing steadied. Echo reappeared, crouching beside Vance's console, eyes bright with quiet intelligence. Across the network, a flood of transmissions began. Not attacks, statements. Worlds declaring neutrality. Fleets withdrawing. Civilizations reassessing their stance. The Council's iron grip had fractured, not through war but through revelation. Crickstall's voice finally returned over comms, weary and subdued. You've changed everything, Captain. They'll never see humanity the same again. Ward stared out into the vast ocean of stars. That's the point. He cut the transmission, leaned back and exhaled. Let's go home. The Resolute drifted quietly toward the Earth, its engines glowing faintly. Nox curled in the cargo bay, eyes half closed. Echo perched beside him, tail coiling around the base of his neck. For the first time since leaving the Council station, the universe felt still. Vance broke the silence with a grin. You realize we just declared independence from the galaxy, right? Ward chuckled, low and tired. We didn't declare anything. We just reminded them who we are. Outside, Earth's blue curve filled the viewport. The transmission logs from the battle spread across every system, every channel. Billions watched the moment a man stood beside monsters and called them family. The galaxy had called humanity harmless. Now it knew better. Because in the silence of the stars, one truth resonated louder than any weapon ever built. If humans could tame the deadliest beasts in the universe, it wasn't by dominance. It was by something infinitely stronger. Trust. And that, finally, was what made them unstoppable.